Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for accepting my invitation, Dr. Ammar Ali Gil. Dr. Ammar Ali is an assistant professor of accounting at Galam Ashik Khan Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology in Pakistan, and a former visiting fellow at ESSCA uh, in a school of management in France. Dr. Ammar, he is an author and published many and several articles in high-ranked journals such as British Accounting Review, Journal of Business, Financial and Accounting, Business Strategy and the Environment. His research interest in diversity, corporate governance, earning management, and CSR, also the performance environment issue. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today webinar. This webinar will be recorded after the presentation of Dr. Ammar. We'll open the floor for any question and we'll go one by one. Thank you all, and Professor Dr. Ammar, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Ahmad, thank you so much for inviting here, and I am pleased to be here, and I would like to welcome all participants again, and let's start by giving a short introduction myself, as you have already introduced me, but I am so humbled that you introduced me in very good words. So I'm an early career researcher, so it's my learning stage as well, and I hope that today's presentation will be helpful for everyone, as well as for participants and as well as for me, because this is still a working paper, and I would like to have feedback from some senior individuals who are in the field since many years, and similarly at the same time it will provide the opportunities to newcomers to learn from what we are doing or what people are doing in terms of research these days. So should I start with my presentation?
Yes, sure. Go ahead, Dr. Ammar. Yes.
Okay. Okay. The topic of today's paper or presentation is the impact of both gender composition on CO imply pay gap. So here is a brief overview how I will proceed with my presentation. First of all, I will explain the motivation why we decided to work on that particular topic. Then this section will followed by literature review. In this section, we'll relate our work to existing work and highlight the gap. And then next section will be about data and methods. Then finally, we'll present our findings, and the last section will conclude our paper. So let's start with motivations of that paper. In recent years, the increasing pay gap has been a focus of the US business press and has also led to a large-scale protests in the US. These protests and media reports are based on the perception of injustice in firms' compensation practices. And when things started to get worse, people were on roads protesting against the pay gap. In response to this protest and media attention, US regulatory bodies made it mandatory for listed companies to disclose the pay ratio between their CEOs and average workers beginning from 2017. And similarly, the things were getting worse in context of China. And the Chinese regulatory bodies took notice of this situation, and they mandated it for state-owned enterprises to have CO implied pay gap or pay ratio less than 15. Then this regulation or this requirement was only meant for state-owned enterprises and not for the or private-owned enterprises or non-state-owned enterprises in context of China. Then, on the other hand, if you see in recent years, the many research papers or research articles in the field of accounting and finance are mainly in corporate governance. The focus of corporate governance reforms is on board gender diversity. And in response to this, several countries have made it mandatory for listed firms to have gender diverse boards. For example, in Europe, Norway, France, Spain, such countries have made it mandatory for their board of directors to have a fixed percentage or proportion of women on their board of directors. And few like United Kingdom, Australia, and US have implemented mandatory board gender diversity reforms. Means they require their listed corporations to comply or explain with the rules or regulations of board gender diversity. Why they are not complying? If they have complied, what are the outcomes? So these kind of reforms around the world. Then the existing studies examine the determinants and consequences of pay inequality and board gender diversity. For example, Fly et al. 2013 and Bandetti and Shen 2018, these studies focus on pay inequality or pay gap, in CO imply pay gap. Then there are several studies on board gender diversity. Recently, there is a paper published by Nikhili and al. In Journal of Business, Finance and Accounting, and you may find many other studies. But despite the increasing literature or growing body of research on board gender diversity or board diversity, so far there is no study that has tried to link board gender diversity with CO imply pay gap. That's why when we see that both are interesting topics and regulators are trying to improve the level of board gender diversity, as well as they are concerned about decreasing or narrowing down the gap between CO imply pay. So we thought, why shouldn't we connect these two topics and come up with some new findings that would be interesting for academicians like publishing houses and regulators as well. So we can come up with some policy recommendations to narrow down the CO imply pay gap. Then the next section is about literature review. As far as the board of directors is concerned, their main duty is to monitor executive performance and make important decisions. But it is also their responsibility at the same time to take care of welfare of all stakeholders, including employee. And if organizations or managers try to focus on welfare of employees, it may decrease the profits of the company, because if they increase the salaries or benefits of employees, it will increase the expenses of the company that will lead to less profits. So therefore it might be possible that management is not interested in promoting welfare of employees. Now here in this scenario, the monitoring role of board of directors is amplified, because managers will try to increase the profit, but on the other hand side, board's goal is to look after or oversee the performance of managers, as well as to look after the needs of other stakeholders, including employee. So in this scenario, it would be interesting how board of directors at the same time can monitor the management by reducing agency problems and by promoting the interests or welfare of employees, including other stakeholders. So consequently, if the board is not under the influence of CO, or in other words, if we say that if the managerial power is low at board level, then board can perform efficiently by controlling or by managing the interests of stakeholders, shareholders, and managers at the same time. But the most important condition to do so is that managerial power or CEO power should be low. Now we'll try to build our hypothesis around this argument on managerial power. If we talk about agency theory, it suggests that uh, the, the level of independence of board should be higher. Our directors shouldn't be under the influence of managers so that they can monitor them in an appropriate manner. In that case, few recent studies argue that female directors do not belong to good old boys group. For example, they are different in terms of their social status. They do not hang out with men, so they do not have close relations with male directors. So given this, they would be more independent in board of directors. And on the basis of this argument's higher level of board independence, we have named this hypothesis efficiency hypothesis. For example, female directors improves the monitoring function of board by increasing the level of independence of board of directors, by improving the attendance behavior at board meetings, and by asking tough questions to CEOs, because they are not related with managers or CEOs. So they are in a better position to ask tough questions. Then there are many studies who found that female directors improve the quality of financial reporting. And to improve the quality of financial reporting, level of independence and level of expertise are key attributes that board of directors must have. It means that female directors are independent, they can monitor efficiently, and they have expertise to perform their job as well. Then female directors can control corporate frauds as well. A recent paper by Wahid in 2019, and another famous paper in context of China on securities fraud by Douglas Cumming in 2015. So there are studies who suggest that female directors can control or can eliminate the possibility of corporate frauds. Then female directors and CEO turnover. So this is an important point with regard to level of independence and managerial powers. And there is a famous paper of Adams and Pereira in 2009 who find that when CEO is performing poorly, female directors are positively associated with CEO turnover if CEO is performing poorly. It means that female directors are independent enough to turn over CEOs if they are not working efficiently for stakeholders or shareholders. Means they have higher level of independence or they are not under the influence of CEO. So female directors and societal issues, like there is a famous theory, gender role socialization theory. This theory focuses on the social role of female directors. This theory predicts that women are more concerned about societal issues like environmental issues, well-being of people. If they are more concerned about well-being of people and societal issues, we argue that they would be more concerned about the increasing pay gap between CEO and employees. So in that case, we expect female directors to reduce or narrow down the CEO employee pay gap. And we can see recent examples in the era of COVID, like I have read some articles in press that the countries led by women have done better in terms of reducing or getting rid of COVID-19. We can have the example of New Zealand, Vietnam. So these are few recent examples that female leaders are more concerned about societal issues or well-being of people in general. So they perform better with regard to societal issues. Then female directors, board independence, and CEO power. From all these arguments and this discussion, we can conclude that presence of female directors improve the level of board independence. And when level of board independence increases, CEO power decreases. And when CEO power decreases, board can have decisions that are not in favor of CEO or against the will of CEO. So in that case, or on the basis of these arguments, we hypothesize that gender diverse boards are negatively associated with CEO imply pay ratio. So this is one hypothesis that we can call efficiency hypothesis. But on the other hand side, there can be possibility of inefficiency hypothesis. Few studies argue that female directors face glass ceiling effect to aim key positions, for example, board directorships, board committee memberships, or executive positions within the organization. Means they have to outperform men to reach these positions. And once they reach, or once they have got such status or position within the board of directors, then they face pressure to get along with other board members. So if they are under influence or under pressure by the CEO or other board members to get along, in that case, their monitoring or their level of independence will be compromised. So in that case, they will not monitor, or they will not be in a position to monitor efficiently or independently CEO. So when this is the case, in that case, CEO power will be higher due to the presence of female directors. And similarly, we hypothesize on the basis of inefficiency hypothesis that gender diverse boards are positively associated with CEO implied pay ratio. Now the next thing is data and methods. So for the purpose of this study, we focus on Chinese data. So we use the data from all Chinese A-share companies listed on the Shanghai and Shenzhen stock exchanges for the years 2005 to 2015. And our sample is composed of 18,492 firm year observations after eliminating all financial firms and missing information on variables that we need to perform our analysis. Initially, we use OLS regression to investigate the effect of gender diversity in the boardroom on the CEO implied pay ratio and estimate the following equation. Pay inequality is equal to female proportion plus control variables, error terms, and coefficients. Where female proportion, let's go through the definition of main variables, and I will name the control variables that we have used in our analysis. So our dependent variable is pay inequality, or CEO implied pay gap. So which is defined as the ratio of CEO total pay to the average pay of an ordinary employees. So this measure is adopted from Falai et al. 2013. You can have a look for more details on that paper. Then female proportion measures gender diversity in the boardroom, defined as the proportion of female directors on the board. So this measure has been used recently by Garcia Lara et al. 2017. And apart from female proportion, we have used the presence of female directors that is measured by a dummy variable, then the number of female directors in the board of directors, and Shannon and Glow index as well for robustness test or additional analysis. Then with regard to control variables, we use controls with regard to board structure, including board size, board independence, and board meetings, then managerial power like CEO duality, CEO tenure, and CEO ownership within the company. Then with regard to ownership structure, we have variables like state ownership and institutional ownership. Then with regard to firm economic variables, we have like return on assets, firm size, firm age, and financial leverage and growth opportunities as control variables. So these are a few basic results like descriptive statistics and initial results of OLS regression. If we see on mean value or average of pay inequality, this is 6.621. means that CEOs are being paid 6.62 times higher than the salary or wage level of an ordinary employee in China. Then, if we talk about female proportion, on average, the percentage of women in our sample farms is around 11.9%. You can say it's around 12%. And if we see at both sides, this is around 10 board members on average. And out of these 10 directors, around 37.3% are independent, and 22% of firms have CEO duality, and average tenure of CEO is 2.7 years. And on average, the ownership of board is 8.5% within sample firms, and institutional ownership is around 6.1%, and state ownership is 50.1%. And as I have explained earlier that this requirement of CEO employee pay gap less than 15% is meant only for state-owned companies. So we can see that almost 50% of the firms are owned by the state in context of China. And if we see our the results of OLS regression, and the relationship here is clearly positive and significant at the level of 5%, means uh, the board gender diversity or board gender composition increases the CO imply pay gap. So these results are aligned with the inefficiency hypothesis that females are ineffective in monitoring or reducing down the gap between CO imply pay gap. So here we can say that H1 is rejected and H2 is accepted. That is, the presence of women is positively associated with CO imply pay gap. Here we have confirmed the existence of inefficiency hypothesis in context of China. Now, these are few basic results and may be biased due to some endogeneity issues because these endogeneity issues are main concern in corporate governance related studies. So the OLS results may be biased because of endogeneity issues like omitted variable bias, self-selection bias, and reverse causality. Now, if we talk about omitted variable bias, self-selection bias, and reverse causality, these all three conditions contribute or leads to endogeneity problems. So to mitigate these issues, we follow existing studies like Garcia Lara et al. 2017, Usman et al. 2018, and Wahid 2019 in using three statistical methodologies. First, we use firm fixed effects regression to control for the issue of omitted variables. If we talk about fixed effect, this is used to control for the issue of omitted variable bias. That is the probability that the association between gender diversity on the board and the CO imply pay gap is driven by one or more unobservable firm level characteristics that are associated with both gender diversity on the board and the CO imply pay ratio, and we are unable to add them as control variable in our model. Then the secondly, we use the propensity score matching to control for the self-selection bias. Self-selection bias means that is the probability that a high CO imply pay gap is due to other firm characteristics rather than to gender diversity on the board. So it means that propensity score matching will allow us to make sure that the relationship between board gender diversity and CO imply pay gap is solely caused by the presence of female directors. In this methodology, what we do, we will compose our sample or split our sample into two parts. One will be the treatment group, other will be the control group. So we'll match our sample on the basis of board gender diversity. If a firm have at least one female director, and if a firm do not have any female director, means we'll match gender diverse firms with non-gender diverse firms on the basis of control variables. and will eliminate the differences by using propensity score matching methodology, and will have same observation in terms of control variables, and the difference will be only on the basis of gender diversity. By doing so, we can ensure that there is no self-selection bias. Finally, to mitigate the issue of reverse causality, we'll use two-stage least scale regressions. So to use two SLS regression estimation approach, we need to use an instrumental variable. And here the instrument variable is key for the accuracy of two SLS estimations. And the condition for the fitness of instrument is that the instrument shouldn't be correlated with the dependent variable, but it should be correlated with the independent variable. So this is the main condition. So to meet this condition and justify the exclusion restriction, we use the average number of female executives who are working in the provinces or big cities where a firm is headquartered. Now, if we talk about the fitness or accuracy of the instrument, so we use the average number of female executives who are working in the provinces or the big cities where a firm is headquartered. Now, the board of directors will be picked or chosen among the population of females who are working within the society. And similarly, uh, in this sense, our instrument, the average number of female executives may have an impact or correlated with our independent variable, that is possibility of having female directors on board, because they will be picked among the population of women within the society. On the other hand side, our instrument, the average number of female executives in the province or city where firm's headquarters is located is not associated or do not have any impact on CO implied pay gap. So this justify the basic condition for the suitability of our instrument. So in 2SLS, our instrument is the average number of female executives who are working in the provinces or the big cities where the firm is headquartered. So we name it as female location. And this instrument is adopted from WAHID 2019. Now the next we present the results of our endogeneity tests. So our variable of interest is female proportion, and the first model present the results of fixed effect. And again, the results are positive and significant with fixed effect model. And if we talk about PSM, the results are also similar as reported in previous model, because the coefficient and female proportion is positive and significant at 5%. And with 2SLS, it reached the level of significance at 1%. Hence, making sure that our initial results are not derived due to any endogeneity issue. And hence, again, validating the existence of inefficiency hypothesis, that female directors are inefficient monitors and they are not able to reduce the pay gap between CO and an average employee. Then for robustness tests, we apply another sophisticated technique just to make sure that our results are valid and accurate. So another issue with the previously reported results is that they share the same common limitation of majority of previous studies on boardroom gender diversity, such as the average gender effect in the boardroom is constant and homogeneous, which is an assumption of OLS regression and other techniques that we have used earlier, that the average gender effect in the board is constant and homogeneous. However, recent studies have shown that such assumption can be misleading. For example, this is a study by Konyan and he in 2017. For example, female directors also affect the dispersion of pay inequality and thus may have different effect at different levels of pay inequality. It means that it might possible in firms where CO implied pay gap is low, females are effective, and when the CO implied pay gap is increasing, the effectiveness of female directors in reducing CO implied pay gap is decreasing, and they ended up being positively associated with CO implied pay gap, because when the CO implied pay gap will increase, what it demonstrates that CO is powerful in that company. When CO is more powerful, the level of board independence is less. When level of board independence is less, board are not effectively monitoring the compensation of CO. So this is the assumption. That's why it is important to see whether uh, this relationship between female directors and CO implied pay gap is stable for different levels of pay, pay inequality. Therefore, to explore whether the effect of boardroom gender diversity varies across the pay inequality distribution, we use the quantile regression as suggested by Lee 2015 and Konyan and He 2017. So here are the results. So we have similar variables like female proportion and all other control variables, but here is the difference. The first model represents results at 25th percentile, second at 50th percentile, third at 75th percentile, and fourth at 90th percentile level. And if we see the results at 25th percentile, the relationship between female proportion and CO implied pay gap is negative but insignificant. And if we see at 50%, relationship is positive and significant at 1%, 75th percentile, positive and significant at 5%, then at 90th percentile, positive and significant at 5%. Now, if we interpret these results on the basis of assumptions of quantile regression, it shows that when the CO implied pay gap is low, female directors are negatively associated, means they are trying to reduce or narrow down the pay gap. But this relationship is not effective statistically or significant statistically. Now, if we move to 50th percentile, 75th percentile, and 90th percentile, result is positive and significant at all levels. But as far as the level of pay gap among CO and imply is increasing, the coefficient is positive but increasing for each level. If we see here, the coefficient is 0.324, and at 75th percentile, this is 1.251. And at 90th percentile, this is 2.478. Means there is different relationship or level of CO implied pay gap, and the effect of gender on CO implied pay gap varies with the level of pay gap. So this is what we want to explain here, that the effectiveness of female will vary with the level of CO implied pay gap. Now, overall, our results entail that female directors are ineffective at reducing or narrowing down the CO implied pay gap. So here are a few concluding remarks. So first of all, we find reliable evidence that gender diversity on the board is positively related to the CO implied pay ratio, hence validating the existence of inefficiency hypothesis in context of China, suggesting that female directors are ineffective at reducing the CO implied pay gap. And unlike majority of existing studies, we also show that female directors' effect is not homogeneous, because our quantile regression results show that boardroom gender diversity has larger positive impact on high CO implied pay ratio firms relative to low CO implied pay ratio firms. And finally, our findings do not support the regulatory initiatives regarding presence of women directors on corporate boards. Means due to the existence or validity of inefficiency hypothesis, we are not in a position to strengthen or verify the regulatory initiatives for promoting board gender diversity or promoting or having board gender quotas in context of China. This is something different in context of China and other Western countries. It may be due to the difference in cultural backgrounds, governance structure, or maybe due to the higher level of state ownership or concentrated ownership, where if we talk about West or other developed countries like US or UK, the ownership is dispersed. So these are concluding remarks, or might be the reasons for having different results with regard to the effectiveness of female directors in promoting effectiveness and improving the level of board monitoring. Now that's all from my side. If you guys have any question, you are welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ammar, for interesting seminar, and really I enjoy it and I like it so much. We have a question with Rihanna. Anyone have a question? Please just raise hand. Starting with Rihanna.
Hello, my name is Rayhan Haddad. I'm a PhD student at Reading University. I'm studying female labor force participation rates in 175 countries from 1990 to 2019, so which is related to what you're doing. It's very interesting presentation. I just have one comment because I missed the beginning of the presentation, so you might cover it already, but I just want to clarify. Have you used the exogenous factors? Because I'm using right now the recursive regression. I think it will be very interesting to have the exogenous factors. Let's say for example, if we have the Y as endogenous, and then we have the X's as the exogenous, and then as an exogenous, and then the hierarchical. If you're going to build, for example, a hierarchical to understand the different factors affecting the diversity or female in the workplace as a CEO, and depending on the age of the firm, I think your results, it's very interesting if we have it as a recursive regression. Do you think so?
Yes, thank you so much, Rihanna, for your interesting comment. And yes, we have used some factors. If you have a look on my control variables, I have some factors like you talk about firm age, firm size. I have this kind of factors, and
what kind of factors? What's the name of the factors that you call it exogenous to your research?
Exogenous to my research. So I have like control variables like firm size, firm age, leverage, growth opportunities. These are my control variables that are at firm level, or you can say these economic controls.
And how did you define the endogenous? Because you talked about the endogenous at the beginning, at the previous slide, the result of the issue of the endogeneity.
Yes.
It's very interesting here. I like the point that in fact that it's very clear for me to understand the endogeneity issues, because that's the struggle to find it as well.
Yes, I have talked about endogeneity issues. It may, like I explained earlier, it might possible that these results are biased because of endogeneity. These are issues like omitted variables, self-selection bias, or reverse causality. If we talk about omitted variables bias, might possible that we have missed some variables that may have impact on the relationship of our dependent and independent variables. And if we talk about self-selection bias, it might possible that the relationship between female directors and CEO pay, CEO employee pay inequality is not solely due to the presence of female directors. It might possible that it is due to some other control variables. So what we do, we use propensity score matching. We match we matched our sample on the probability of having gender diverse boards and all male boards. In terms of gender diverse boards, it means that a board should have at least one woman, and all male boards mean the boards do not have any female on the board. So uh, to do so, what we do, we had a treatment group and other control group, and we match these two groups on the basis of all control variables to eliminate the differences in governance characteristics, ownership structure, and firm level variables. And once there is no difference after the propensity score matching, after having a matched sample, then we use that particular sample in our regression and run regression, and this makes sure that the impact, that the relationship between dependent and independent variable
Variables, yes.
is not due to any other characteristics. As I explained earlier,
It's robust.
yes, these are robust. And then
But
finally,
I have one more question. You said that the firm, the size of the firm. I just want to qualify your results. You said the size of the firm and the age of the firm. What is the effect of the size of the firm? For example, for women, the size and the age for the same society or the same community. Have you found it this larger company have more women in their board, or smaller company? Could you clarify this result again?
I have find that the larger firms who has more revenue or more assets are more likely to pay higher salaries, are more likely to pay higher CO employee pay inequality. And if we talk about firm age, it, uh, in some regressions, I have find a negative relationship between firm age and CO imply pay inequality, and sometimes this is positive, but this is not consistent in all regressions.
It's not consistent. Okay,
Yes.
thank you so much. It's very interesting. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rehan. Ibrahim said. Ibrahim, your mic is mute.
Okay, now first of all, I would like to thank you for this wonderful seminar. My name is Ibrahim Saad. I am assistant teacher of Faculty of Business in Shams University. I have two questions to Dr. Ammar. First of all, can we consider pay one of CO characteristics or not?
Can we use pay as one of the CO characteristics? You can. There are several proxies of CO power. You can say CO duality, CO tenure, CO ownership in the firm, and similarly, we can use CO compensation as a proxy for CO power. So it shows that if a CO is paid higher as compared to other executives or other CEOs of similar level companies, so it means that CEO is powerful. So compensation or resources always add to the power of CEO.
Power, not measure of characteristics of CEO.
Okay, so if you talk about CEO characteristics, we can use gender, we can use his education, we can use his prior working experience like financial experience, or he has worked you may find some paper on academic CEOs or professor CEOs. So these are some kind of characteristics. But
yes,
yeah, I hope it's clear for you.
Oh yes. Next question, please. If I want to classify CO characteristics or manager characteristics, can I say behavior characteristics and demographic characteristics or not?
how you will define behavioral characteristics? We can
like overconfidence, like power, like risk taking,
yes, we can classify them in terms of behavior. And if you talk about demographics, as I have explained earlier, in terms of demographic, we can
gender
have
and
gender,
age.
age, education, ethnicity.
Uh, okay, and is this classification is correct?
Yes, I can assure you that demographic characteristics is correct, but in terms of behavioral characteristics, apparently they seem okay, but we need some support from the literature. And I haven't worked on like behavioral characteristics, but I have been working on demographic characteristics of board of directors and CEO so far. So with regard to behavioral characteristics, I would suggest you to dig some literature.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Muhammad Asif Khan.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes,
I
we
can
can.
hear you. Please go on.
Okay. Okay. I have a clarification question. Since you discussed that your data is time series from 2015 until 2019, so how could you be using OLS as a regression? Because this time series data could violate some assumptions there. Why don't you prefer PLS as a good software for measuring those statistics for that? Because
Yes.
in time series, if you are collecting by secondary data, you have to use content analysis for that. So it will mostly violate your multicollinearity issues or normality issues will be there. But you are using OLS for time series data. How could you justify this one?
Uh, your comment is valid, but let me correct you. I am not using time series data. This is panel data. We have years and cross sections. Like we have number of years, and for each year we have data of different companies. So this is panel data, not time series. And your comment is valid that in case of time series we cannot use OLS or techniques that I have used.
Okay. So you have gone through multicollinearity issues and other issues like because you have many endogenous and exogenous variables there.
Yes.
Did you clear normality issues? You raise your concerns and that say, but I don't see there.
Basically, what we do,
Because I just want to clarify because
yes.
in research you need to have these clarifications because multicollinearity is an issue. If issue is there, so your research is not valid than that. If those normality issues are still there, your data is not valid. So how you can justify these results are there?
We have checked the correlations. Everything is okay according to standard. Correlations are less than 0.5. And then we have also checked variance inflation factors and
Yeah, various inflation factor is a multicollinearity. So
yes, so that's why I'm trying to explain you that variance inflation factors are also less than 3 as recommended. And I haven't added these here just to save some space or keep it simple and just to focus on main results. And then
in
why I have
okay, this is clear to me. I justify that this is clear to me, I suppose. But the second question is, since your multicollinearity is below 3, so why your R square is 65 and above that? I see that R square was at the ending, I see R square is 65 for the one analysis and something like 96 is for another analysis. It should be considered in social sciences, R square is below 50. Why it is above 50?
dear, this is not 96% or 62.4%. If you see, this is 0.0624. It means 6.24. This is quite low. Now the question
Okay.
should be this. Now the question should be why this is too low. Because we are using a ratio as dependent variable. That's why R square is low.
Okay. That was misunderstanding. So I see that because
No,
it was
no,
0.562. So I thought it is above that because mostly in medical sciences, it should be like that.
Thank you so much for highlighting these points, and it may have clarified the confusion of some others. Why R square is very low? So this is a technical question, and when you are using ratios in your dependent variable, R square can be that low. So this is
But
not a
if for let me add something there. Sorry for
okay.
adding. I apologize for that. But when you are using like a return on assets or return on sale, this is ratios of financial measurements. So you can use MLS analysis for removing those normality issues. Then it will be increased automatically to 20 or 17.
Thank you so much for that suggestion, but I haven't checked it this way, so I will try to have a look.
Yeah,
And
it was very interesting presentation. I like it really. Thank you
thank you,
very much.
thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mohammed. Rashid Javed, the next one. Yes, Rashid. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
Dr.
Yes,
Rashid, go on.
yes, I am Rashid Javed from Po Business School, France. Very interesting presentation, and I really enjoyed Dr. Mar talk. I have listened Dr. Mar on various occasions, and I am always been impressed by his influential ideas. I have, according to today talk, I have a couple of questions. First, I am interested to know, did you differentiate the family firms and non-family firms? And second, I want to know, did you consider the total experience of a female director in a given firm? Because I think that if a female director have more experience, then she is more autonomous in decision making. Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rashid, for attending this talk. And basically, these are very valid questions. If we talk about contextual factor or governance factors, we need to consider these things: family-owned firms versus non-family-owned firms. But in China, situation is different because, as I explained in my presentation, more than 50% firms are owned by state and less than 50% are privately owned. So here the analysis can be performed on the basis of state-owned versus non-state-owned companies, and the focus shouldn't be on family versus non-family firms. And that this recommendation or rule is also meant for state-owned companies, that the CO employee pay ratio or CO employee pay gap should be less than 15 times. And with regard to your question, we haven't performed family versus non-family analysis. Then with regard to experience of female directors, we have solely focused on the presence of female directors by using several proxies like proportion, number, dummy variable, and Shannon and Blow index. And we haven't used experience in that paper. This is still a working paper, and we can incorporate this helpful suggestion in further analysis. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rashid. And the next one, Rashid. Sorry, Rehan again. Yes, go ahead, Rehan.
Yes, hello.
Yes.
Yes, hello.
Go on.
I would like to ask you a question. Is that your thesis for your PhD?
No, I have done it long ago. My PhD, this is one of my working projects.
This is working paper.
Yes, this is my working paper.
Okay, so where are you planning to submit this working paper? To which journal?
Management Accounting Research is our first target.
Okay, because accounting and American accounting as well, it will be one of them to position your paper too. And I wanted to mention something about the age. You said the firm, now the director, the firm director, woman, female director of the firm in a community, do they have the age? Did you compare the age with just the size? For example, have you tried to put in the age as a dependent variable to understand the relationship between the age and the size together in hierarchical? For example, it will be interesting to understand the effect for both, just in the director.
You are talking about a firm age or director age?
Yes, the firm age and the size of the firm, both.
Should we use it as dependent variable?
Yes, as a hierarchical. For example, if you use it as a to test both effect. For example, you can test the age with the size, and then the age of the firm and the size of the firm as for female director as a dependent variable. Here you will know the effect directly related to the age and the size, because it will be really interesting to know more if the woman, for example, companies have more than 10 years and women and female director run this company for more than 10 years, and this company size as well, let's say it's I'm sorry, I have this voice, 1 minute. So then when you have the age and the size for female to be there, because some women, they will open the company, it will be opened, yes, it's her name, she will be director for this, but then it will not be active. And for how long she's active as well. So the age of the firm and the age of the woman when being director at the same firm. So here you will know exact answer of the how this related to women, because so many companies it's run by women, but there is no many employee as well, and the number of employee for the firm too.
Okay, yes, this is a good suggestion, but how it will affect my dependent variable, that is CO implied pay gap? If we
It will affect because dependent for how long women run this firm, and then how the size of the firm as well, and the age of the firm. So the longer age for women to be a director in the same firm, and the bigger size of the firm, that will help the economy, and that will lead the policy change of the inequality for the larger scale, let's say in the macroeconomics. I'm talking about from micro to macro perspective. I think this is will clarify more for the reader, even if you just point it out as a limitation, for example.
Okay, what I got, you are trying to make a point that we should control for the experience of female directors within the same firm.
Yes, within the same firm, yes. Because sometimes it's dependent on how long she's been in the firm as well. So it's, and how many employees under her, that's to have an effect in inequality in pay.
Okay, thank you so
for
much
the firm.
for that helpful suggestion.
I think I can send you later on my literature on that as well. But it's very interesting presentation, and it's very interesting working paper. It's related to, you touched my heart with this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for these comments, and I'm happy to receive such feedback. And here is my email ID. You can contact me anytime if you want to discuss your work and you have some suggestion for me. You can write to me directly as well.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you, Rihan. Mohammed Janahi.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Dr. Ammar, for your very interesting presentation. I am a PhD student in accounting at the University of Warwick, and I am doing something similar to your paper here. I have some points. You mentioned at the beginning that there are two theories, the efficient hypothesis and the inefficient hypothesis. The inefficient hypothesis states that females, that boards appoint females, and females just try to get along with the other board members, so they just like rubber stamp their decisions, and they might have a negative effect on the firm. So I was thinking, isn't it better to control for board education? So it might be that a board which has, or a firm which has a very high pay gap, they appoint a low profile female just to look that they are good, that they are diversified, they are diversifying their boards. So it might be the education factor which affects the results. So I was thinking that it might be a good idea to control for the education.
Wa alaikum assalam, and thank you so much for this wonderful suggestion. And basically, this is a different paper. If you go through my previous publication, specifically in British Accounting Review, I have controlled for several factors. Like the title of the article is like Beyond Gender Diversity, how attributes of female directors affect earnings management. So this is not only about gender, but most likely these are the educational attributes like experience, status within the board, whether a female is working as independent, executive, or audit committee member, or board chair. Similarly, in terms of education, we can talk about education in general, business education, board level experience, multiple directorship. So I have considered all these factors, but here the limitation is that in context of China, the data availability was an issue. So
Yeah.
we're not able to control for these things. But this is a valid point. We should move forward to have effect of gender, to have effect of qualifications other than gender. So this is something valid point, and as I explained earlier, there is no study on this topic so far. So
Yeah.
at a starting point, I think that would be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. And I have another point. Actually, it might be an idea. Um, I don't know if you have data about this, about the CEO gender. So if the CEO is female and
Yes.
the board has more female directors, so here the board might be less independent if they have more female directors. So I'm thinking that might be possible that if the CEO is female, then the pay gap might be higher in firms with higher female directors. So it might be an idea for a second hypothesis.
Yes, we have data about female CEOs, and that can be done. And I think it would be interesting to add like both, if we have male CEO or if we have female CEOs, and how female directors increase or decrease the level of pay gap.
Yeah.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, you are welcome. And the last thing, you might have mentioned it before, but did you try to square the gender diversity measure because to test for the invert U relationship?
No, I haven't used this one.
So it
Yes.
might be that at low level of females, so if the board has like 1 or 2 female members, then the relationship will be negative. But as it increases, then they gain more power. So the pay gap decreases. So some research find this relationship. So they square the proportion of gender diversity measure. So it will be gender diversity squared.
Yes, even
Yeah.
we can test critical mass theory as well as an additional analysis.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you very much. These are the points that I have.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mohammed. By the way, sorry, Dr. Ammar, I just want also to advise Mohammed. Dr. Ammar, also, my PhD is about gender diversity, gender, age, and national diversity, and I really enjoy reading one of best paper and one of key article about gender diversity by Dr. Ammar Ali Gill in British British Accounting Review, and I highly recommend you to read this paper. And also, I don't know if Dr. Ammar published his PhD as well. It's really have many details and high quality details that will help you in your PhD. Dr. Ammar, I have some question. First of all, I really impressed of the data that you have. It's really a big data, and I know how it's hard to get these data, especially in China. I publish already one paper in China, and I know how it's hard to get the data in China. Before I want to ask you about you said you talk about the theories and how the previous study talk about the theories like agency and the other theories. But the question, what you use in this paper, which theory did you use? Because I didn't hear that you use something, or maybe I missed.
I have used agency theory and gender role socialization theory.
Great. And also, as one of the audience, I think Dr. Rashid, I really with him the same line, which when he recommend you to add family firm, and you said maybe you didn't check, or I don't know why you didn't choose the family firm. As my experience, I know there is large or big percentage in family firm in China. And here I can see the paper by Chang et al. 2002. Family firm are estimated to represent 80 to 90% of the economy or the firms in China. So it's a big percentage. I think you need to add family firm in your as a control variable. Also, thank you. I really enjoyed that how you solve the endogeneity problem by several ways, like using fixed effect, 2SLS, and so on. That will really improve the quality of the paper. Another question about, as Mohammed said to you about the education, I know, and really I know 100% about the previous publication, because I read it multi times. I don't know how many times I read it. Okay, but I am talking now about this paper. Why you didn't use the education and experience? I have two questions. The first question, if you control it, and the second question, maybe you can use it same as the previous paper, which is a measurement, one of the measurement of gender diversity. As you know, you talk about pay, the compensation and the CO pay, and this is one of the major point, which is to know what is the education, what is his certificate, and also the what is his professional certificate, if he has like CPA or MBA or so on. And also I want to know what is the contribution and what is special in China. So why you choose China rather than the data that you have? I know it's the big data that you have.
Okay, these are very tough and many questions. You have bombarded me with questions. First of all,
I can go one by one.
Okay, now let me sum up your discussion. First of all, you want me to comment on why I haven't controlled for family versus non-family forms. First one. Second, why I am not focusing on attributes of women like education or experience. Third, why China?
And the contribution of the paper.
Yes, why China and contribution of the paper. So first of all, with regard to your question, as I explained earlier, in China, the majority of studies in context of China focus on state-owned versus non-state-owned companies, because this is a distinguishing feature between China's context and the context of other Western or developed countries. That's why we focus on ownership structure, where we have board ownership, CEO ownership, institutional ownership, and state ownership. And mainly, this this recommendation is applicable to only state-owned firms. Here I explained it in first slide. Chinese regulatory bodies require state-owned firms to have CO imply pay ratio less than 15 times. So this regulation is specifically meant for SOEs, mean state-owned companies. That's why we have considered them as control variable in our analysis. And with regard to family farms, as you have mentioned a paper, I would be grateful if you can share that paper and we can have look on that paper. Then we can try to arrange data about family and non-family forms, which is family form, which is non-family form. Then we can incorporate this analysis in an updated draft of this paper as well. Then the second thing is about attributes of female directors, education or their certification. We are not able to control for these characteristics due to non-availability of data. And why China? China, in these days, China has become a large economic power, a fastest growing economy in the world, even in times of COVID. This is the Chinese economy who is performing better. Even they have created opportunities out of this crisis for themselves. So they were first who were hit by that virus. So they recovered quickly. They tried to make equipment like testing equipment, protective equipment, medicines, and they started supplying. Even in case of IT equipment, they are doing great. So this is a major economy recently. And if you see papers published in recent times in top journals, you will find many papers on Chinese data. So it will increase the acceptability or acceptance ratio of your paper if you have data of US and China, because these are big markets these days.
Correct.
Then the governance structure is really different than of US. As I explained, in China, ownership is concentrated with state-owned firms. Many other governance restrictions, like there is no mandatory board diversity regulation in context of China. And if we talk about US and other developed countries, ownership is concentrated. There are several other governance differences, and gender quotas have been implemented in many other countries. So the purpose of doing this research in context of China was that this regulation has been implemented in case of US, where they are required to disclose the CO imply pay ratio starting from 2017. And similarly in China, there are few studies in context of US, but there are hardly any study on board diversity and CO imply pay gap. And specifically, there is no study on gender composition and CO imply pay gap in context of China. And then it is not easy to get data of China. So what it will give us first mover advantage. If we are talking about two issues that are being taken very seriously these days around the globe, both gender diversity, on the other hand side, is CO imply pay gap is also an important issue in context of US and China at least. So it will give us first mover advantage, and if we got some good results in context of China, we can have some good policy implications that Chinese regulatory bodies should also implement both gender diversities, uh, uh, or both gender quotas, or at least some regulation, or some uh, some recommendations as with other countries. So these were the motivations of doing this study in context of China. And in turn, these can be the contributions. Hello? Are
Hello,
you with
yes,
me?
yeah, I am with you, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Ammar. Thank you so much. It's really clear. Thank you. And there is
Yes.
some question in the Q&A. If you can open it, you can, or you want me to read it for you?
The questions, okay. Let me
Down.
go to-
It's a Q&A.
Yes.
Down.
Yes. Is pay considered CEO characteristic? We have already answered this thing. I think it would be difficult to say CEO characteristics to pay.
I think you
Then,
answered it.
yes, I have answered it earlier. Then
Yeah.
another question by Shakila Halim. Female directors includes both executive and independent directors as the ratio calculated against total directors in both. Yes, this is true. We have considered the whole population of female directors, and we do not make any distinction between executive and independent directors. Then the next question by Mansoor Adam. Though I was late, why did you concentrate your source of data to China as opposed to other developed countries? I have explained it in a detailed manner. So do this thing need further discussion, or that's okay?
No, I think that's okay.
Okay. Then the next question is, thank you so much for the kind presentation. Could you please explain two issues in light of your study? One, female directors versus expertise or experience of directors. Second, China has a considerable issue on state ownership. Could that have any interaction effect on female director selection? Obviously, I have answered the first question, female directors versus expertise or experience of directors. So we'll try to fetch data of female directors' experience or expertise and see how it will affect CEO-employee pay gap in context of China. Second, China has a considerable issue on state ownership. Could that have any interaction effect on female director selection? Obviously, it have effect on selection of female directors, because they will be state-owned firms are most of the time managed by the state, and political connections are key to get positions in state-owned firms in China. There are several scholars who have highlighted this point. So I would say that state ownership obviously affects the selection of directors and female directors too. Then can we do further research by comparing US and China firms? Obviously that can be done. Even in context of US, there is no study on both gender diversity and CEO-employee pay gap so far.
Thank you, Dr. Ammar, for your time, and thank you for all the audience for joining today webinar. Also, before please leaving the webinar, there is after leaving the webinar, there is a survey. So I hope everyone fill the survey. It will take less than 1 minute. The next webinar, next week webinar will be by Dr. Muhammad Alqatan. The title of the webinar will be the Qualitative Research Method in Newcastle University in United Kingdom. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Thank you again, Dr. Ammar, for wonderful and really I enjoy it, and for also the informative presentation. I really enjoy it, and thank you, and hope to see you in person soon. We didn't meet in Canada, but inshallah we'll meet in some day. Thank you so much.
Inshallah. Dr. Ahmad, thank you so much for inviting, and I really enjoyed presenting my work and having wonderful comments from wonderful people, and I would like to continue collaborating with you and ITAR group in future as well. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Stay blessed, everyone. Bye bye.
Same to you. Goodbye.